What happened to Fourth Power after they raised the roof on X Factor UK with a Jessie J hit way back in 2015? Are they still together? What are they doing now? And what does 75 Dogs have to do with anything? Let's dig in. First of all, we're going to recap just in case your mind has slipped somewhat since 2015. Fourth Power, as they was known then, don't worry, we'll get into that, are an all-female Filipino girl group. We have Almira, Irene, Melini and Selena Corcado. The oldest was Almina, who was 27 at the time, and the youngest was Selena, who was 18 at the time. Here is what they looked like back then. They was in Series 12 of The X Factor, which was in 2015, as I mentioned, and they auditioned with Jessie J's Bang Bang. They came in 5th place, pretty ironic given the name Fourth Power. But even though they came in 5th place, they was the most viewed YouTube video on the X Factor's channel. And this is a big channel. We're talking like 187 million views. Uploaded like 7 years ago. Still, of all and every audition they upload on the channel, this has been the most viewed ever. But to talk about where they are now, we need to first understand where they was. So here's a quick little sum up of what they was doing before they was on the X Factor. So the group was formed in 2001 by suggestion of their aunt. They was originally named the Corcado Sisters because obviously they're all sisters whose last name is Corcado, so that was their original name. In 2006, they joined and won the World Championship of Performing Arts in the Philippines, which is like big important competition. They did a few festivals, they even released a not so successful EP during this time. In 2009, they changed their name for the first time to the Galleon Sisters. So there was the Cacado Sisters, but now the Galleon Sisters, which was a kind of derived from their middle names. Kind of, it was derived from their middle names. Then in 2012, they won a Filipino variety show called It's Showtime. Now in 2014, they changed their name a 3rd time to something a lot more easy to remember, a lot more easy to say. They changed their name to Mika, which was derived from the first letters of their first name. 4 of them, you know, M-I-C-A. Mika. That same year, they also entered a Korean talent show called Superstar K. They then tried out for the Filipino X Factor, but they was rejected. They said they didn't have star quality. Pretty funny knowing what we know now. After that is when they applied for the Big Boy show, the Big Boy X Factor UK. Now after they was accepted, I'm sure you can guess what they did. They changed their name again. This is an ongoing theme with these girls. They love to change their name. This time they changed their name to Fourth Power, which is how we know them now, and with a lot more reason behind it. They was coming over to the UK to do X Factor UK. They couldn't come with the name Mika because we already had a pop icon named Mika. Remember? Big girls, you are beautiful. Get yourself to the Butterfly Lounge, find yourself a big lady. I was a massive Mika fan. So they couldn't compete with the name Mika. We already had such a big Mika, so they changed it to Fourth Power. Fair enough. A lot of reasoning. Fourth Power, fourth name change. Why the hell not? And that brings us up to speed on where we know them today with that audition. X Factor UK, big stage, big lights, big cameras. Speaking of which, if you're curious about my lights, I've got some lights here, I've got some lights here. I've got that little stargazing light way back there. I've got the red light over there. I've even got those little lips on the wall. If you're curious about any of this, links are in the description. I've also got links for my camera equipment, my microphone, everything that I use to make this video is linked below. So if you're curious, check that out because some of them are really cheap. That light was like £20. That's not expensive at all, except for the candle. The candle's not in there. Unless you want me to put the candle in. I'll put the candle in as well, like a vanilla scented one, very Christmassy, but I'll put that in. Anyway, point being, where did they go after X Factor? Well, coming to the end of X Factor, there was some copyright issues, which meant, would you believe, they had to change the name again. A 5th time they had to change the name. This time they changed it to Fourth Impact. So they swapped out Power for Impact. Something about copyright issues, but that's also why, if you're ever curious about where they came from or where they are now, it can be somewhat difficult to find it because we know them as Fourth Power, but they changed the name to Fourth Power pretty much on the flight to the UK. And coming to the end of the show, they changed their name again. So they're only Fourth Power for that slot. So if you look at the history of Fourth Power, it's, well, they started on X Factor and they finished on X Factor. They then went on the X Factor tour. Interestingly enough, a poll was conducted after the tour which named Fourth Impact as the best act of the show. They continued to perform globally. They returned to the Philippines to perform in the first Paradise International Music Festival alongside the likes of Kanye West and Wiz Khalifa. They then released their own debut single in 2017 called Unleash the Diva. Now the song peaked at number 3 on iTunes and number 1 on Spotify, but only the Filipino versions. iTunes Filipino, Spotify Filipino. It didn't get global success. So they was really big, really popular, really successful within the Philippines, not so much outside of the Philippines. Now, as well as bouncing around with names, there was also bouncing around with labels. And in 2001, they released their first single as an independent girl group, which was a big thing. But you may remember this was also the time when everyone was quarantining. And the Philippines had what was considered as the strictest quarantine protocol in the whole of the world. So they couldn't leave to record, they couldn't do any gigs or anything. So what they did instead is they did a lot of streaming things. And once again, the streaming of the gigs, the streaming of the music, like everyone else did, was incredibly successful in the Philippines, not so much outside the Philippines. Not saying they don't have fans still outside, which gets us up to 2023 and where they are now. So they're still living in the Philippines and this is what they look like now. This is Almira. She looked like this. She now looks like this. She's now 35. This is Arena. She looked like this. She now looks like this and she's 32. This is Malini. She is 30 years old now. She looks like this, whereas she used to look like this. And finally, we have the youngster of the group. We have Selena, who is now 26 years old. You might remember her looking like this. She now looks like this. And this is what they look like as a girl group all together. So a lot has changed, but they're still making music. They're still gigging. They're still doing very much what they did. It's just they had the most successful thing they've ever done was here in the UK on the X Factor. And then they took that fame and kind of went back to the Philippines. So for us, we just seen them coming out of nowhere. It was huge. It was all over the television, all over the internet, all over the tabloids and the newspapers. And then suddenly they disappeared. It seemed like they just disintegrated. But no, they went on to have a strong, long career just in the Philippines. And they're still working on things. They're still looking at getting back out after the quarantine as an independent group and doing some gigs and doing some tours. So there you go. Now, as for the dog thing, if you remember me mentioning at the beginning, completely unrelated to the music, but very interesting nevertheless, I found out that they own 73 dogs, 70 of which are Shih Tzus. That's a whole lot of dogs. Interesting, right? Now, what I would like to say is, if you are from the Philippines, leave me a comment and let me know whether you hear about them in daily life. Like, are they in the Filipino tabloids, on Filipino TV a lot? Like, are they more popular there? And if you are a fan and you think I've missed anything out, also comment. Let me know if I missed anything out. And finally, subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Subscribe, like, comment, do all those things, but only if you like them. If you got something to say, comment. If you like the video, like it. If you like me, subscribe. And if you don't do any of that, no hard feelings. Thank you very much.